good. Rebounded by Anthony. 2 seconds left. Anthony for the win. Cody rolls it. Cole Anthony gives the Magic a victory.
Close Up Magic.
All right. Welcome back to another episode of the Close Up Magic. I'm your host, Stephen Cameron. And as always, we got my man, Malik Grady. What's going on, sir? How you doing?
Not much, man. Just enjoying being buffeted along by the winds of Paolo well into August, getting through Franz and getting to this season sooner than later. Yeah.
It's exciting. Like every week there's a highlight to talk about or this to talk about. It's like, I'm waiting for the week to when is there nothing? And it might be this next week. We might not have anything because I don't think there's any more programs lined up for Paolo to go dominate.
Is playing Wednesday.
Oh, yeah.
I think it might actually be televised.
You're right. We're going to have something to talk about. It's great. It's not
really anything, but still.
Yeah. I don't know. Actually, I think Franz and Euro basketball is actually more something than Paolo and pro-ams because
Luka and
real
Dragic are both playing.
It's real competition. These guys that are playing actually care and mean it, and it's not just
countries care.
Right. It's not just a hype game, right? These are like legit refs and stuff like that. Like it's a different field than these pro-ams.
Giannis is playing tomorrow, I think.
Dude, yeah, it's a big deal. So I'm looking forward to that. That'll actually be pretty fun. Thanks for the reminder on that. As always, let's just get right into the housekeeping. This podcast is brought to you by 19 Media Group. They are great. They are fantastic. Check them out. We're going to leave that short and sweet. Malik, you're holding up some numbers. What are you trying to say there?
Put up a 1-9. Sorry.
1-9.
It just looked like I was
1-9.
asking, surrendering. I'm sorry.
Like, are you raising do you have a question? Also, for us, please like and subscribe to this on your podcast platforms. Our preferred podcast audio platform is the Good Pods. So go check them out.
I just downloaded it. It's not bad because I just switched phones and I needed a new podcast app because I'm switched to the Pixel and stuff. I like it. It's fun.
Yeah, it's good. I like it. And then obviously, if you're watching this on YouTube, hit the subscribe button. I've been putting it up. So hit the subscribe button. That's where I'm pointing. It'll help out a lot. So, Malik, what are you doing over there?
Oh, I'm doing stuff just for the YouTube people. I was pretending to do stuff with my nose and stuff. So it's a double meaning and stuff. There's levels to this stuff.
Okay.
Video only.
And the last thing, let's just get into it real quick. Tweet of the week, man. So I'm going to jump into mine. I saw a tweet this week that was really, really cool. It's of this dude. His name is Mr. Jersey Worthy. And he's got this cut up of Paolo Banchero Orlando Magic jersey and a Duke jersey. And it just lines up perfect. Half blue, half white letters on one side, blue letters on the other. And he just stitched it up like absolute perfection. Or he got it custom made like that. But either way, it's incredible.
Yeah. And just looking at him, he kind of looks like Terrence Ross's older brother. So he kind of looks like he should be a Magic player in some ways if you look at his actual face. So
a little bit.
I think it's kind of gross to have Orlando Magic and Duke together.
Yeah, I would never wear
the effort
ever.
Yeah,
in the Orlando Orlaki or whatever, how everyone's, it's weird. It's weird, but I'm just impressed. It looks cool and it's very nice precision on the lineup. Malik, what is your tweet of the week?
Well, for my tweet of the week, just like a couple weeks ago, I cheated and picked my own tweet. This week, I cheated a little bit and I went back a couple of years to 2018. As everyone knows, Bill Russell passed away.
It's allowed because
back on July 31st, age of 88. But now back when he was 84 in 2018, when this tweet was made, this is a tweet from Bill Russell himself, where he says, "Sorry, everyone. I forgot it was live TV. And I can't help myself whenever I see Charles. It just is pure instinct." And there's a picture of him flipping off someone in the camera. And the backstory on this is that it was the NBA awards that year. Charles Barkley was saying thank you to Bill Russell. And they pan the camera to Bill Russell. And Bill Russell just with this big smile on his face and a beautiful pink shirt just kind of turns his finger up and flips Charles Barkley off. And it was hilarious. He's like, hey, when I see Charles, I want to flip him off, that kind of thing. So anyway, it's just a great kind of light moment for kind of a sad moment for a guy who did so much for the NBA, 11 championships in 13 years, first Black head coach and a player at the same time, and social activist. So, kind of buffeting the sadness with a funny tweet. It's my profile picture right now for the great Bill Russell, that kind of thing. So, yeah.
That's great. That's actually a great one. Bill Russell was the man. And man, he made such a huge impact, off the court in some ways more off the court than on the court. It was like such a cool dude.
I hope that I'm flipping people off with a beautiful smile when I'm 88. You know what I'm saying? That's what I want to be. I want to be smacking people with a cane and flipping people off.
Like,
I want to do it now, honestly. There you go.
Do it. Go ahead. We're here.
Beautiful.
Anyways, we have a great episode this week. We got Philip Rossman-Reich of Orlando Magic Daily and Locked On Magic on the show with us. We get into some fun conversation, a little bit about the current Magic, all the DeJounte Murray and Paolo Banchero news. We get into some Magic history. Philip's been covering the team for a long time, one of the hardest working reporters that cover the Magic, and he's got some fun stories to tell, and we kind of go all over the place, and it's really kind of an enjoyment for a episode in August as we continue to count down the days until training camp. With all that being said, I hope you guys enjoy the show. They should enjoy the show, right, Malik?
Yeah, it's an honor to be with Phil. I love him. He's a grinder. If you come for him, you come for me. So definitely enjoy this, you guys.
Yes, sir. We'll talk to y'all soon. All right, everyone. Like I said in the intro, we got Philip Rossman-Reich of Orlando Magic Daily. Philip, how are you doing today? Thanks for joining the show.
I am doing good. It is August, so it feels like we should be hibernating because it's August and you don't want to peek your head out too soon.
No. With it being August and as Malik and I keep referring to it, the dog days of summer, how are you surviving? What are you doing right now with your time, your free time, that you're not covering the Magic? I mean, you're always covering the Magic.
Yeah, always.
You're nonstop, but there's it's different because there's no games. You're not going to games. You're not going to media events. We're making up the content. So how are you personally spending the extra free time you have?
Yeah. Aside from the day job and getting my last elixir of NBA 2K22 in before the new game comes out, which I will buy because I want Paolo, and I enjoyed playing with Paolo earlier in the 2K season. I usually take this time to kind of take a step back and look at some history items. We're starting a project on Orlando Magic Daily right now, where we're going to be looking at the best shooters in Magic history, as well as kind of the Orlando Magic's relationship with the 3-point shot. It's obviously a shot that's more important than ever. And so I want to try and spend this kind of downtime before we get to training camp, before we really start kind of honing in on this year's team, just kind of thinking a little bit about, how 3-point shooting has shaped the Magic, and honestly, how the Magic have shaped the kind of revolution in 3-point shooting that we've seen throughout the league. I've always told people, the 1995 Magic were one of the revolutionaries of the league as far as using the 3-point shot. Both the 95 Magic and the 95 Rockets, I do have to give them their credit as well in that run. And obviously, I think for the modern game, the 2009 Magic were really the first team that showed you could win as a 3-point shooting team, as a team that relied on 3-pointers as a primary weapon. Personally, and maybe this is just because I'm so Magic centric, I think you can draw a straight line from the 7 seconds or less Suns to the 2009 Magic to the Golden State Warriors, the team that's kind of defined this decade. I don't know if the Warriors exist, obviously Steph Curry, but I don't think the Warriors exist the way that they do if the Magic hadn't kind of proven that you could play that kind of style and find success. So I do think that we still talk about the 95 Magic. I think the 2009 Magic are going to just be one of those kind of really influential teams. And so I wanted to examine a little bit about, what the Magic's relationship with the 3-point shot was throughout their history. And so, I wrote a post, I think it was Friday or Saturday. I lose track of days. It's a day that ends in Y, I can guarantee that. I wrote a post talking about what the 3-point shot was like when the Magic entered the league, and how, even getting a guy like Dennis Scott, I don't, Rick Hamill of NBA TV talks about this a lot. How Dennis Scott was really one of the true pioneers of the league and of the 3-point shot. And, it happened here in Orlando, and obviously getting Shaq kind of kicked it into overdrive and really changed how the league kind of looked at that 3-point shot. Like, even looking at some of the early numbers, just as a teaser, the 1999 season, the Magic's first season, only 2 teams in the entire league took more than 10 3-pointers per game. Like, just kind of let that sink in, considering where we are. Teams take 10 3-pointers in quarters regularly in the modern NBA. The 3-pointer really didn't start to explode until that 1994-95 season, even 96, when they brought that 3-point line in a little bit, is really when 3-pointers started to be, when teams started to figure out, like, oh, this is an actual weapon that we can use to stay in games and help us win. So it's really kind of been fascinating to start looking at that, especially as how it relates to the Magic, who, were really a big part of the whole revolution throughout all of its stages.
It's funny that you talk about, that as your project right now, 3-point shooting. I just, like, this weekend, I woke up thinking about the 2009 finals that we played in. And I went back and watched game 2 where Rashard Lewis scored 34 points. I, cut the video and did a little highlight of his points and rebounds and assists and stuff. And I posted that on our YouTube page, just for fun. I'm not trying to, like, be a highlight cutter or anything like that, but I just, like, I think Rashard Lewis is one of the best 3-point shooters we've ever had. Not necessarily like, like all-time great shooters, like, JJ Redick was to an extent to the league, but, like, Rashard Lewis was a sniper from 3 for us. And
he was important. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just, he's one of my favorite players. He was so good. He's one of my favorite players in the Magic. It's just funny that we're both kind of, like, thinking about the past.
I think
point shooting and shooters and stuff like that.
So, like, part of the project, like, the project started as I usually do a list, and I get the whole Orlando Magic Daily staff to kind of submit a list, and we make a final kind of, we try and crowdsource a little bit to create a final list. If I'm not mistaken, on my ballot, I have Rashard Lewis as the best shooter in Magic history. And a lot of that is, it's not just he was a great shooter.
Yeah.
He was wildly influential, not only in a winning team with the Magic, but in changing the NBA. I mean, I don't think people are going to talk enough about what Rashard Lewis was able to do. He was a guy that could guard Kevin Garnett and push Kevin Garnett out to the 3-point line on defense, really just open things up. Anyone who argues with me that the Magic overpaid Rashard Lewis, yeah, maybe they did, but Stan Van Gundy's 100% right. He was worth every single penny. And if you watched him every day, there's just little things about his game that, you just you grow to appreciate.
Go to any finals team. Sorry, Malik, I know you want to jump in here, but let me just say, like, any finals team or finals contender team, there's a player on it that is overpaid in some capacity.
You have to,
like,
if you're signing anyone
to win.
If you're signing anyone in free agency, you're overpaying them. That's the bottom line. Like, that's why trades are the best way to get guys. That's why drafting is the best way to get guys. If you're paying a guy in free agency, more likely than not,
especially
you're going to overpay them, especially if they're good. Yeah.
Yeah. And also, like, you pay to win. If you go look at net spend on teams that make the finals, they're all
on the tax.
Win. You pay to win. So the Magic are going to get there at some point in a couple of years too, where all of a sudden we're, oh my God, so sorry, Malik, go ahead.
Well, I mean, I was just going to echo that. That's something that I've kind of been educated on myself over and over now, is that you can both overpay in years and money and be a great, smart deal. I felt at the time that, Nikola Vucevic, for that amount of years, that amount of money, was an overpay, but it also turned out to be a great deal because, you're able to get the years out of him, but also, kind of flip him for a great deal. You look at the kid up in Cleveland, Jared Allen. I thought it was an overpay in terms of the years and money he got. However, he was a great cog to a great team, that kind of stuff. So it's interesting. I want to go back to what you said about managing the dog days of summer. Do you feel like this summer's any different for you because we have the number 1 pick and all that kind of stuff? Is it going faster or better, or is it kind of just same old, or what?
I obviously, I think having the number 1 pick and having Paolo Banchero, just it increases interest. Like, look, in the lead up to the draft, and I'm sure you guys saw the same thing, my numbers like doubled like overnight. Like everyone was just so interested in who the Magic were going to take number one. And even after the draft, just the reaction to it, just trying to figure out who Paolo is, just added to that. Obviously I think what's a little bit different about this offseason is Paolo's playing in these pro-ams, and that part's honestly exciting because, the pro-ams, you take them for what they are and they are completely meaningless, but they're for the fans, number one. They're just extra basketball. And so obviously there's something that you're trying to fill and something that you're trying there's a news hole you're trying to fill. And so there's something to fill it. And obviously it was always fun and interesting to have all these other teams say, oh, my guy is playing in a pro-am. And Magic would always just be like, our guys aren't, like, we don't have anyone playing in these
maybe
pro-ams.
at AG a little bit here.
Yeah, maybe AG would show up at, I don't think he showed up at Drew League, but there'd be, but he'd show up at a league somewhere. Maybe Oladipo would do something in DC, but most of our guys kind of worked quietly. And honestly, like, something that I've really enjoyed is I'm aware of a lot of these pro-ams, but something that I think is really kind of nice and endearing about Paolo is the whole reason he's playing at the crossover and playing at Zeke weekend is because it's giving back to his hometown. Like that to me says something about who he is as a person. Like we're going to get into what happened this weekend, but like he was rebounding for all these guys and hanging around all these guys, back when he was a kid, wanting to play in these programs, wanting to join these guys in the NBA. And if you, listen to, I think I was listening to Paolo on All the Smoke, and like Steven Jackson and Matt Barnes were all saying that, hey, like Spencer Hawes or all the Seattle guys were telling him like, hey, this Paolo kid is coming up. He's going to be really good. Like to see Paolo go back and play,
Doug Christie too, maybe. I think
Doug Christie,
a lot of guys.
I don't think we were allowed to mention Doug Christie and any Magic related entities.
Calm down over there, Malik.
But like to see how, like, the Seattle basketball community is great. Like,
it's huge. Like, it's one of the best basketball communities in the entire country.
Yeah. And I mean, if you haven't seen the documentary Save Our Sonics, like, it does a really good job portraying the Seattle basketball community.
I haven't seen that. That sounds
good. It came out like a couple years after the Sonics moved to Oklahoma City. It really shows the emotion of how betrayed like the diehard Sonics fans felt. Why attendance was starting to dip, was what really kind of dropped off, and really how it had to do with ownership, much like how
Howard Schultz.
It was a huge mess. But like, Seattle is a great basketball community. And one thing that always kind of stuck with me is like, yes, a small market's got to kind of stick together a little bit. Not that Seattle's a small market, but like they even say it, kind of foreshadowing what was going to happen with Sacramento. There's a fan in that said, I never want any market to go through what we're going through. But I understand that if Seattle's going to get a team again, we're probably going to have to do exactly what Oklahoma City did and steal it from someone or take it from someone. And like, look, Seattle is a fantastic basketball community. I want to see the Sonics back there. I don't think the NBA is interested in teams moving around. I think there will be an expansion team in Seattle.
Yeah.
That city deserves a basketball team because it is such a great basketball community. And you can just tell by the crowds at the crossover, the crowds at these pro-ams, just how much basketball means to these communities and how much this community means to a lot of these basketball players. And so seeing Paolo go back to this place and kind of chill and hang out and put on a show for them. That, to me, that speaks a lot about who Paolo is as a person and makes me more excited to see him. So that's helped fill the time. I'm a big international basketball junkie for FIBA play. So I'm really excited for Eurobasket. I know Germany's getting ready to play their games. So we'll have a couple guys, we'll have Franz and Mo Wagner playing in Eurobasket. So I'm really excited to see them play. But yeah, other than that, it's just kind of waiting for the season to start. I think we're all just, more than anything, I think this season we're just more eager for the season to start because we want to see how this all plays out.
You can take yourself a little vacation somewhere in between now and the season?
I am heading to Utah and Arizona at the beginning of September. My cousin's getting married, and then family's going to kind of chill and chill in the desert for a little bit.
That's awesome. Beautiful states. I love them.
Love Utah. Utah's my second home. Third home.
Yeah. I get to go there occasionally for work, and it's like every time it's a blast. And I've gone there.
Utah, Chicago, Orlando. I'm assuming, right?
Yes.
Gotcha. There we go. I remember.
Yeah.
Philip, let's just get into it. Paolo got into some drama over the weekend. Him and DeJounte Murray, who I'm a fan of both, had a little interaction that also bled over to Instagram with some back and forth a little bit, and then also some aggregation from a random account as well.
And also ESPN and beyond ESPN.
Everyone got it. Everyone got it.
Yeah,
We're at the top of the food chain.
I mean, look, it wasn't aggregate. It wasn't aggregation. Like they were chatting and talking each other up.
One of the accounts was, I think one of the screenshots that got floated around was fake
there's a few fake ones.
Yeah. That's what
NBA Paint did a drawing of it.
Hoop Central.
Yeah.
A couple extra O's in that.
Yeah.
So anyways, they were playing pretty aggressive. DeJounte Murray was going at it back and forth with Paolo. There's this one clip that everyone kind of went off on where Paolo is guarding DeJounte Murray. Murray fakes him out with a fake pass. Paolo falls for it. Then he throws the ball off the backboard and all-the-oop dunks to himself, which was a pretty badass move. I'm not going to lie. It was pretty sick.
It's pro-am. That's what they put on a show.
It was going out. I mean, that was a pretty far, weird angle for that type of move too, which is pretty cool.
Beautiful travel. Loved it.
And then all of a sudden a nice aggressive throw of the ball to Paolo to inbound it.
After some trash talk, yeah.
What do you think, man? Are we overthinking this as fans like I think we are?
I mean, look, I think there's a lot of there's something going on here. Something had to have been said between Paolo and DeJounte at some point that set him off. Maybe DeJounte is like one of those dudes that only has one gear. And this was, the championship game of the tournament or of the weekend. And like, look, there's Hometown Hoops, I think, has like a 13-minute highlight reel of both Paolo and DeJounte.
Great.
Like it was great. It gave me the whole thing of the game. Like, we all watched crossover live, but like this gave you like a flavor for the whole game, game. And it just felt like DeJounte was just playing like, there was that tweet going around that like DeJounte after winning a Pro-Am, and it was Pat Beverly like throwing his shoes in the crowd. And like, look, and I said this on my pod. I have no problem with what Pat Beverly did in that thing, but in the play-in tournament like that was a great moment for that franchise. There's a lot of energy. Like DeJounte Murray was playing this game like it was life, like almost life or death. And Paolo is just kind of cruising along. And I think we all know, I think we kind of got the sense that Paolo will talk a little trash, but he's just going to keep going at his own pace. And something set DeJounte off, and DeJounte flipped the switch from I'm chilling at a Pro-Am to I'm going to go prove a point to this kid. And to that extent, Paolo still held his own. If you watch the tape, watch all the highlights, like they're throwing double and triple teams at Paolo because they can't do anything with him. That was the only way to stop him. There was not a lot of defense played by either side. Paolo got his defensive shots in, he got his moves in, he did everything else. But Paolo was playing it like down here, if you like down toward the bottom of my screen. DeJounte was up here, up by the top of my screen. And like I was watching it and I'm just like, I don't know what was said. Maybe something was said that really set him off, but like I was just like, DeJounte, man, like just chill. Like this is a freaking Pro-Am. Like you don't need to go hard at him. And like, I honestly, like, I think Paolo was probably, a little bit offended. Like, I don't know if Paolo knows what he did wrong. What set DeJounte off, and, those Seattle guys are really tightly knit. And so I think Paolo was probably a little bit offended. And that's probably what led to some of the back and forth on social media, where Paolo was like, I don't know what I did to offend you, to get you to unfollow me on socials, but man, like we're just playing a Pro-Am here. Why are we taking this so seriously? And so, George Karl kind of chimed in and said, he's a rookie, he shouldn't be talking trash. And I'm just like, shut up, George Karl. Just stay out of this, man. Like I'm glad we can rekindle that rivalry with the Magic, because I think Magic fans were getting a little too chummy with George Karl with the Jamal Mosley connection. George Karl is not someone that's welcomed in Orlando because of the Milwaukee Bucks days. If you don't know that story, look it up. I don't know where you'll find it, but look it up. So I'm glad that as a history buff, I'm glad that's being rekindled a little bit. Like it's a pro-am, guys. Like Paolo looked good. DeJounte looked good. Let's all just be chill. And at least this is like confirming some, like reports that like DeJounte was acting weird at the end of his days in San Antonio. There's a clip, people are like, DeJounte Murray's telling Paolo Banchero he needs to not showboat and show up when he's, bouncing the ball off of a opponent's head. That's not an NBA player in a pro-am game. It's just like, I'm glad that NBA Twitter has kind of sided with Paolo and said like something's up with this DeJounte Murray dude, that he's taking this the way he did. Now, again, maybe something happened. I don't want to close the door to that, but it's a pro-am guy.
I do want to push back a little bit. I don't, in terms of watching the game, in terms of the timing of when this kind of disturbance came on, that was very early in the game.
It's like right before halftime, I think.
Well, I mean, it was even there. The score was in the 20s when that happened, and so it wasn't like there had been a huge amount of time for something to occur. But what had occurred was these guys have known each other for years, and that they're both from Seattle. So there is some sort of history there. I'm not saying it was personal on that level and stuff, but to me, what seems obvious is that you have, DeJounte Murray, who's now, cock of the walk, got his big contract, and you have this young guy coming in, his number one pick, wearing jewelry, getting the big shoe deal, that kind of thing. So kind of like maybe putting him in his place as the older Seattle player. Nothing personal. I love it. I mean, like when a guy comes to my court, and I've known him since he was 14, and now he's 18 and he is going to college, I want to put him in his place. I think it's all good. I love it. And just what I also love is what you said about, the summer. I love that Paolo is keeping us in the social media NBA sphere. There are some people
something to talk about
who only cover the NBA or love the NBA because of the stuff around the NBA. Who's dating who, the Instagram posts, the Finstagram posts, the burner accounts, all that kind of stuff, because that is incredibly fun to cover on a year-round basis. Now, some of us only get into basketball, but I kind of love both sides. And Paolo, as this famous young guy wearing his chains and coming from Duke, that kind of thing, he's keeping us in that kind of zeitgeist. And I love it because we haven't had that. I mean, Aaron Gordon kind of did that a little bit. He had his rap stuff going on, a young guy, dating who he would, that kind of thing. But we haven't had a guy that's really capturing the imagination since we had guys like Shaq, maybe Dwight a little bit, but Dwight wasn't a guy like kind of going in and out of the highest clubs.
We also didn't have like social media like we did back with Dwight.
But now
it would have been a lot different if we had
our own
Dwight
version
today.
Exactly, like maybe like Ben Simmons, like that kind of stuff. So I'm all for it. I love that we're in. Are we going to be in the news next week again for something else? I mean,
maybe
Mo Wagner's going to get into a fight with someone at Eurobasket.
Yeah.
Like we all understand this, right? Like I like it's kind of like adding to that. Like one thing that I really like there's not a lot you can learn from these programs. So one thing I do like is, like you said, DeJounte Murray was trying to put the young guy in his place. It's very clear that was part of what happened. Was the number one pick came into his gym. He was talking stuff, and the veteran was like, "Okay, I'm gonna shut the young buck up. I'm gonna shut this puppy up." That's gonna happen a lot during the regular season. There are going to be all the best players, your LeBrons, your KDs, your Siakams, all those top guys at his position. They're going to be testing him all year long, and it's going to be. Can Paolo stand up to them all? And, clearly like these guys think, to that point, these guys think Paolo is on that level. These guys think Paolo is worth testing. Like God love Franz Wagner. No one was testing Franz Wagner last year. Like no one was like trying to like figure out Franz Wagner. And, some of it might be cultural. Some of it might be like, oh, we never really heard of this guy entering the league. He's not number one pick. Paolo's a guy that everyone's heard of. They've known about. He went to Duke. He's the number one pick now. They're going to be coming after Paolo all year long. And so what I was
he's clapping back too.
And he's clapping back. He's not afraid because he thinks he's on that level. And so one thing that I do think was really, really like interesting and something that can be something we can carry over is all this happened and Paolo was just kind of cool and like brushing it off and still giving it to him and still playing his game and still doing his thing. Like it didn't affect him. Like I've joked with a couple people, so I'll share it here. If I'm Jamal Mosley, second week of training camp, like maybe like the Tuesday or Wednesday, second week of training camp, maybe even before that first preseason game, I turn to Mo Wagner and I tell him, I want you to get under his skin. We're not going to call fouls. I want you to get under his skin just to see how he reacts to it, just to see what he does and what that brings out of him. Like that's going to happen in the league. That's something he's going to have to practice and be ready for, because the refs aren't going to give him calls quite yet. I don't think he's going to get the calls he got in summer league when he was a featured player. He's going to have to earn everything and earn respect. And, whether he earned DeJounte Murray's respect, it doesn't seem like he did. But like when I watched that tape, I saw a guy that like took someone who was coming after him, took his licks, definitely got beat a few times, but still kind of stuck with it and didn't change his demeanor.
Protecting the rim too.
Yeah.
I saw at least 4 or 5 blocks myself.
Yeah. And not like cheap blocks, like nice blocks, like tough blocks. I'm
not saying he's Rudy Gobert. I'm just saying.
Pro-am guys. It's a pro-am guys.
So anyway, we don't stay on this too long and everything.
Let's move on.
Get off it.
We've already talked about this pro-am way too long, in my opinion. Philip, I'm going to totally flip the switch a little bit. You've been covering this team for a very long time, with Orlando Magic Daily and Locked On Magic now for 6-7 years. How long have you actually been covering the Magic, and how did you even get into covering the Magic in the first place? What's a little bit of your story? I don't think this is a story we've actually had, or a conversation.
Define covering the Magic. I started writing for Orlando Magic Daily back in 2000, in the fall of 2009. So during the 2009-2010 season, I was in college at the time at Northwestern. So I got on with Zach McCann, who's founded Orlando Magic Daily for the 2009 finals run. It was one of the original podcasts on the True Hoop Network back in the day. He was looking for a little extra help. I knew him from a high school program that I did with the Orlando Sentinel. I was kind of writing some Magic stuff on my own as kind of the blog space was starting to blossom.
Sure.
And so I got in with Zach and I was writing about the team throughout the 2010 season, but I was still a fan. Like I still went, when I was home, I'd go to games as a fan. I went to the playoff games as a fan, like, decked out full in blue. Like I grew up a Magic fan. I grew up in Orlando. I joke about, define covering the team. I was practicing writing articles on the Orlando Magic when I was in like middle school. Like I've been wanting to be a writer forever. And just the easiest thing to do was go to a game, come home and write a recap. And that was kind of where like my writing started. And that's where I kind of started as a writer. I got credentialed in the 2010-11 season. And so that was when I went to my first game as a media member. And so I've been going to games ever since when I can, whether, school gets in the way or work gets in the way, that I've been covering the team as a media member for, I guess it's been 11 years now coming up.
And then you eventually took over Orlando Magic Daily.
Yes.
When did that transition happen?
That happened in the 2011 season. So, like I'm a go-getter. Like I'm obsessed about this team. So I, was writing, maybe a post every day, every other day when I was in school. And, Zach got a job with the Orlando Sentinel, kind of helping out. I think Josh was the beat reporter at that time, but he kind of started doing some social media stuff for the Sentinel. This was back when the Sentinel could hire people, RIP Orlando City coverage at the Sentinel. So, Zach could no longer run the site. He said, "Hey, do you want to take it over?" And I was like, "Yeah, absolutely." And so I've been running the site ever since.
Now, here's a question, Phil. Now, what's your relationship to like the early days of the Magic? I know obviously you're younger than I am and all, but is it just you kind of always remembered it, or do you remember guys like Greg Kite?
Oh yeah,
like that?
Yeah. Greg Kite showed up at Anthony Bowie basketball camp wearing a Pacers division championship shirt. I remember that vividly. We all booed the hell out of him.
That's funny.
See, I remember the commercial very clearly. I want to say it was the second year of the Magic, and the guy would come on the radio and be like, "And new edition bruiser center Greg Kite."
Well, you got to remember he was with the Celtics. I don't remember that commercial, but he was with the Celtics, so that was like a big deal. Probably my first memories of going to games was the 93, 94, 95 season. I remember specifically being like my parents had season tickets. We like my parents were original season ticket holders. My grandfather was very slightly involved in ownership with that original ownership group with Bill DuPont. If you have the Making Magic book by Pat Williams, which I finally read, I'm a bad Magic fan. I had not read that book. I knew most of the stories, but I had not.
I didn't even know that
book.
Magic book existed, so I'm a worse fan.
It's a good read. It really gives you a sense of what a miracle this team is. RIP Orlando Miracle. But my mom is in the like thank yous in the back of the book.
Oh wow,
and like
that's cool.
I was literally finishing reading the book on a plane. My mom is sitting like the row aside next to me. I like put the leaflet in the page and I hand the book to her. I said, "Hey, take a look at that page." And like I don't even think she knew that she was recognizing that book. So like my family was like tangentially involved in ownership,
cool.
like very, very, very small percentage, but we always had season tickets. So I grew up going to games. And so my earliest memories were probably going to like 90, like early Shaq, early Shaq. I remember like specifically, saying, being angry at my parents because I didn't get to go to the first playoff games, to games 1 or 2 against the Pacers, because they were both on weekdays and I couldn't go on a school. Yeah, I couldn't go to to a game on a school night. And so that was like, I was just livid. So my first playoff game was game 1 of the 95 playoffs against the Celtics. And I remember just how awesome that whole thing was, how awesome that whole experience was. And so I grew up, like probably my most vivid basketball memories, my formative basketball memories. Like I remember Shaq and Penny, but like what I actually understanding what's going on the floor was probably the T-Mac era. So I have a very soft spot for those early 2000s team, from Heart and Hustle all the way through the T-Mac era and into, I'm still a little bit of Steve Francis homer. I don't think he gets the love and respect that he deserves for his brief stint with the Magic, but I understand, why and how things completely fell apart. And, Dwight was, obviously I grew up watching, I was very conscious of what was going on. I was in high school by the time Dwight came around. And so I was able to really follow the team and understand what was going on at that point.
We relate there on the same where the Heart and Hustle team and really like Tracy era was when things started like solidifying for me as well. I have vivid memories of going to those games, watching like specific moments within certain games where, like there's always this one story I always tell. It was during, I don't remember if this was during T-Mac or I think it was during the T-Mac era. And I don't remember who we were playing though, but like it was me and my dad were sitting upper level. We had moved down to like the first row of the upper level because it was just empty and you could do it back then. And I was yelling as a little kid loud enough to where like a player on the court stopped during like a timeout and just kind of looked at me like, why are you screaming? Calm down. That's but awesome. Like, I mean,
I've done that too.
Yeah. It was crazy. I mean, just the fact, but it was that empty, that's the wild part.
Anthony Bowie had amazing hearing, so I understand that.
It was, I don't remember who it was. I'd have to go back. Maybe it was T-Mac, who knows? Philip, you, out of all the years you've been covering the team, what's been your favorite season to cover so far?
Favorite season. I have unfortunately covered a lot of really terrible seasons.
This is a hard question.
I honestly
got in and then all of a sudden we tanked.
I really like the Scott Skiles season. I will say this, like one
why
thing
is that?
Because they were decent for at least the first 2/3 of the season. After the Tobias Harris trade, it was just like, okay, he's like, this is
question though. Is it because, I mean, you say they were decent, but you also covered the 2019 Magic. Were you in a different place career-wise?
I was in a different place career-wise. Okay. So like,
makes sense.
So like the Skiles team, like I was able to go to every practice. Like I was in a place where I was trying to make it work full time. And so I was at every game and at everything. The 2019 team, it was a lot of fun, but I was, working a day job. And obviously the playoffs were great. So I wasn't there every single day, or I wasn't doing everything every single day. in the same way. Like, look, the 2019 team was great. How quickly it all came together was really the exciting part. But like, with that Skiles team, it for a while there, it just really felt like things were coming together. It really felt like, okay, all these years of going through the draft, they finally have something figured out. And to see how quickly it fell apart was the shocking part, and trying to figure out like, why is it falling apart? And then, I will say this, like, one thing that I really learned that I didn't think I understood.
Don't send your team to England to play basketball.
Don't send that for sure. Or Brazil, as they found out, I think it was that year too, they went to Brazil and they all got sick at the start of the season. But like, one thing that I've really learned covering the team and being around the players is just understanding like the amount of work that all the players put in, understanding how smart the coaches are too. And so like, just being around, look, Jacques Vaughn wasn't ready for the job that was put in front of him with the Magic. I probably said this when they hired him, is like, he's probably going to do better in his second job than he does in this one. This is not a job set up for his success. He made things worse. Like, he was very not ready for that job. But like, Scott Skiles coming in, you could just tell there was just this level of understanding of what we need to do, and the way that he coached, and the way that he even talked to the media. Like, Skiles can be a little bit abrasive, but like, even the way he talked,
I remember those. That's an
understatement. But the way that he talked to the media, like, you always learn something. Like, I learned a lot of basketball talking to Stan Van Gundy. Like, Stan Van Gundy, I probably learned more about the NBA from talking to Stan Van Gundy, in press conferences than I ever have. And I always like remember these things. Like, I remember like people were asking him all the time about Dwight training with Hakeem Olajuwon, and Stan Van Gundy was like, he trains with Patrick Ewing every day. Like, why? Who cares about a 2-hour session with Hakeem's great. I'm not telling him not to do it, but he's hanging with Patrick Ewing all the time. And and so like, a lesson that I always took from Stan is like, we don't see all the work that they're doing. Like, we may think like, oh, a coach should play this player, but the coach is seeing that player in practice all the time. The coach is seeing all these things, a lot of things in practice all the time. And so, I always like came to understand, like, we're us as fans, us as observers, we're always working at an information deficit. And part of that is part of our job is to like try and find some of this information, figure out this information, that you can't come into this with conclusions. You have to have an open mind and like ask pressing questions, ask like why, how, or, not like kind of make accusatory, like inclusory questions, because a lot of this stuff is they're figuring it out. Like, I learned like Frank Vogel. I loved working with Frank Vogel. He was just really, really personable. He's obviously put in a really bad position, a really bad spot. Just one of the nicest guys. He'd take the time to explain things to you. He was, you could tell he understood and knew a lot about the game, and just didn't have a really good fitting roster for what he wanted to do. Steve Clifford is a fantastic teacher. I loved hanging out, working with Cliff. And, one thing that I wish these coaches would do more, and if, I were running PR and if the coach is up to it, I would do an on background, thing saying like, okay, this is what we're trying to do. Like, I want you to be smart and informed enough to say, to if you're going to criticize us, at least know what the hell we're trying to do. And like one thing one opportunity that I had that was really awesome with Skiles is he let a couple media members watch the first couple practices that year. It was really, one of my first times watching an NBA practice, and like, just understanding the terminology. Like, I would be watching a game, they'd say something they said in practice. I'd be like, okay, this is what they're trying to do now. This is what that means. And you don't always think about this stuff if you're not like close to the ground. And so, again, like that Skiles year, just being there every day, being at every practice, being around them every time that they're home, because obviously I'm not traveling. I just learned a lot. And you could kind of see the pieces coming together. And obviously then you saw it all kind of fall apart very, very quickly. And obviously there were just a lot of things going on that season that we didn't really know about. But you could tell that like he figured some things out with that group, and to see where they'd started to where we thought they were heading was really good. And again, Skiles, I give a lot of credit. He was always real. Like, I remember I asked him the question, like, it's obviously a disappointing way they ended the season. They started 19-13. They finished 35 with 35 wins that year. 35 and 47. And I remember asking like, hey, you got, at the end of the day, this was still a 10-win improvement over last year. They had 25 wins the year before, they had 35. And I always say that, I know I repeat this line a ton. Scott Skiles said, look, it's easy to go from 25 to 35 wins. It's hard to go from 35 to 50. And that's where we need to get next. Now, obviously he was about to resign and things were about to go completely off the rails, but stuff like that always stuck with me about like, this is the perspective you need.
And that's why that made that season a little bit more fun for you.
Yeah.
As a reporter?
It was the storylines were just fascinating because it looked like this was a young team that had figured some things out. There was genuine excitement. But at the same time, everything fell apart. I remember during that January losing streak, like people would be complaining about Skiles and I'd literally like kind of, I wouldn't say clap back at them, but I'd literally say like, look, this team hasn't been able to win more than 25 games. If they're not going to listen to Scott Skiles after they started 19 and 13, that's a them problem, not a him problem.
Sure.
And that honestly kind of proved to be correct in the end.
Let's keep it moving here. So you've had a lot of experience in practices and media sessions in locker rooms. Give us a story and sort of condensed story because we got a lot of questions we want to ask. What's one of your more like two-part question? What's a funny story that sticks out, a funny moment? And what's what's your holy grail moment of like, this is the coolest thing that I've experienced as a reporter?
Let's see. Unfortunately, the funniest story I probably can't share on here because I don't want to.
Come on, no one's listening.
I don't want to out people. Maybe I'll share it off air because it's a little racy. There is locker room talk. We can't pretend that there isn't.
All right, on to the next one then.
But I got a few other stories. Gilbert Arenas was like one of my favorite guys to talk to in the locker room. He was, if he was in a good mood, he was fantastic because the dude has no filter. And like, I will be a Gilbert defender in a lot of ways. You just have to understand, he's just going to say the first thing that pops into his head. He's not always going to be thinking when he talks, which makes him a great guy to have a conversation with.
Mm-hmm.
But, genuinely, again, when he's in a good mood, when he's in a bad mood, everyone's bad when they're in a bad mood. But genuinely, like most of the interactions I had with him, he was just great. Like I remember walking up to him, his locker, he was on the right side of the Amway Center locker room, just completely filled with shoes. And at that point, he had his little sneaker calendar. He had a website showing what sneakers he was going to wear. And like, I know nothing about shoes. And I noticed he has these like Louis Vuitton shoes in his locker, these like Louis Vuitton style, like sneakers. And I say like, hey, could you wear those in a game? And he looked down at them like real briefly. He was like, yeah, I probably could, grip wouldn't be great, but I could probably do it. And so like Gil was driving a lot of like the jokes and conversations in the locker room, like him and Dwight, like all that stuff when they were planking around downtown Orlando. Yes, planking was a thing during the lockout. Right. They were two peas in a pod. Those guys were just little kids having a good time. One of my favorite stories, Hedo Turkoglu was notorious for being out of the locker room by the time we got in there. He was gone. And for the most part, none of us wanted to talk to him because, as bad as this might sound, like the "What did Hedo just say" game that Dante and Galante used to play, 100% true. Like trying to listen to a Hedo Turkoglu press conference or media. His
accent is really
tough. It's very thick. It's a very thick accent. And so there's a game against the Golden State Warriors in his second stint. So the trade had already happened when he came back from Phoenix. And he gets a triple double. I think it was against the Warriors. He gets a triple double, and him getting a triple double. We got to talk to him. So like we all enter the locker room. He's gone. And after a little while, he peeks his head in, no shirt on, just shirt. His shirt's like on his like he's got his shirt slung on his back. He's like, "You all need me? Yo, can I go? Can I go?" And so it was just like, that was quintessential Hedo. Like he knew he had to talk. He knew he wasn't going to get away this time, but like, Yeah, but
That's
he was
funny.
Hito was great. Hito was always good. Hito was always good, and he's obviously the best. Like everyone loves him.
What's your holy grail moment? Like you're like I don't know, you got this information and can't believe you got it, or something like your best moment as a reporter. Like
I'm not a breaking news guy. That's not my job. Like I'm not trying to break news. I don't have the time to do it. I really honestly don't have the political energy to be a news breaker. If someone wants to give me information, I'm happily going to take it. But like a lot of the times I don't even know what to do with it. Like I've had information before that I was told to sit on and I sat on it because, I've also learned in journalism, people will give you information to test to see what you do with it. And to see if they can trust you, and understand that. So, I've had a few trade rumors that people had funneled to me that I could never really pin down. But honestly, like the cool thing was like, I think Victor Oladipo is a little bit younger than me. I remember chatting with him a little bit about Big Ten basketball. I'm a Northwestern guy, so like, I was in school the same time as Etuan Moore.
Cool.
And so Etuan Moore and I would talk trash to each other a whole, like during his first stint, would talk a lot of trash to each other, between Northwestern and Purdue. Those Purdue teams, his Purdue teams were one of my favorite outside of Northwestern. I loved his Purdue teams. It was Etuan Moore, Jawan Johnson, Robbie Hummel, who is still playing basketball, and probably still has eligibility left at Purdue. That's a Big Ten joke. And Chris Kramer, who everyone else in the Big Ten hated. I absolutely loved him because he was just a pest. Those were like, I loved watching those Purdue teams. So I remember chatting with Etuan, just kind of shooting the breeze about Northwest, about, what he thought of Northwestern, what he thought about playing in the Big Ten, and just kind of sharing that college experience. So like, again, like I think that like the biggest lesson that I have learned and something that has shifted in my fandom since I started covering the team is you understand that these are real people. It's very, very easy to kind of sit there, play with the trade machine when you're at a distance and not like see them as people who are hardworking and trying to do their job. And when you actually get to sit down and talk to them and be around them and see all the work that they do, it changes your perspective on the league a little bit. And certainly like, I think I'm definitely more player understanding than I was, back when I was a kid, which is understandable, but like, yeah.
Now, Phil, do you seem to still have the same, I don't know, energy and fire that you used to, listening over the years? Do you get jaded? Do you get a little run down at how, because sometimes your philosophy of engaging with fans can seem a little bit exhausting, where guys are pulling you into things, kind of trolling, kind of like getting you into some of the same arguments and stuff.
I still don't think you know how to use the mute button or the block.
I've started muting people.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
There's a few people I'm muted where I'm just like,
I worry about you sometimes. Like
yeah.
I have some friends in other like, sports things that are like, have to take breaks because the toxicity of social media is too much for them. But I don't see the outwardly that happening to you, but I do wonder sometimes like, man, is Phil getting beat up? Does he have people looking out for him? Like, where is people? You know what I'm saying?
It definitely happens. I won't lie. There's been a few times where I've been in a few arguments where like I am cursing a storm off camera, on to my screen, but not writing it down. Like I try, like my philosophy is always like, be welcoming to people. Don't act like don't act like everything, accept other people's arguments. And honestly, I think that's part of what gets me in trouble is I don't always portray what I think. I will play devil's advocate, or I will say, I think this is what's going on and come at it from a neutral perspective. And I'll even come back and say, like, I don't necessarily agree with this, but I think this is what's going on. I think this is the reasoning behind it. And I'm generally I'm kind of a conservative guy when it comes to moves, especially. I will generally, kind of defer to the team has more information than we do. And I don't want to be a shill, but I also don't want to jump the gun and go too quickly on things, or, not take something without seeing the whole picture. And obviously there's definitely a point where that has to happen. I would say like my energy tends to wane, like once the season feels over. So like those last, like there have been tanking seasons and we can call them tanking seasons where the last 2 to 3 weeks, there is literally nothing more I'm going to learn. The storylines are all the same. There's nothing new to say. And I'm just struggling to try and find something to talk about or find something find some point to draw out. It happens in a lot of those seasons where they're just really bad. Thank God Markelle Fultz played this year, because if Markelle Fultz hadn't played this year, there would have been nothing to say. There would have been very little to say about the way this season ended.
Well, and people were getting pretty dark there. They're like, well, this guy ain't coming back. He's not coming back. The Magic are lying to us. So there was the conspiracy narratives had really reached a fever pitch. So it helped
and the Magic
back a lot.
And honestly, like, a big criticism I have for the Magic and their PR strategy is they allowed an information vacuum. And like, look, I think my approach to like being, equanimous and being kind of in the middle, that doesn't work today. You kind of have to stake a position and, not necessarily go to war over it. I think you can, especially with something as stupid as basketball, not stupid as basketball, but as something is essentially meaningless. There are positions in the world right now where you need to put a flag down and be ready to go to war.
Yes.
There is serious stuff going on in the world. It is an election year. So if you aren't registered to vote, go, it's too late for the primaries. Go do that. Go register to vote for the general in November. There are really important things going on in the world. This is basketball. You should be able to kind of come to an agree to disagree and say like, hey, we'll see what happens. It's, to me, an 82 game season is, yeah, I know it is. But I try very, very hard to be able to turn the other cheek, to be able to say, like, I understand where you're coming from, and acknowledge when people make good points that I don't have answers for, and say like, hey, that's a good point. I don't have a really good answer to that question. And, that's part of the equation. That's something you have to think about. I mean, I think, the debate about, whether the Magic should trade for Donovan Mitchell, that is an open-ended question. I know how I feel and what I think about that. But when someone says there's, this is a guy on a 4-year contract, he's of the age that all these players are, if you're going to go all in, this is the guy to go all in for. I'm just like, I don't think I would do that, but I don't think that's the wrong answer. I don't think that is wrong. I think you made really good points. And if the Magic did that, it would make sense to me. It's not necessarily a bad decision. I think, one thing that we all have to remember is there's no one right decision. There's no one wrong decision here. Figuring out how to build a team is a constantly evolving process. And so you have to be open. You can't, to me, your approach can't be the Magic need to, or any team needs to do things this one way. And if they don't, I'm going to be pissed. You got to be open to there's a lot of information out there that we don't know. There's a lot of things that we do not know. And most things catch you by surprise. Even in the NBA, most things will catch you by surprise at the end of the day. And so, again, a lot of the times I say, well, this just sounds like you don't trust the front office, which fair. Like the front office and the front office of this team has burned Magic fans a lot. And, there is Jeff Weltman does have to build a little bit of trust. And I think he has, but I certainly understand people who aren't ready to trust him or are ready to see the team kind of take a more aggressive stance. But like, yeah, I mean, it's tough. And especially when the team's bad and everyone's just, I also look at it this way, like there, like a lot of us who argue on Twitter, and this was the case during like the 2019, 2020 seasons. I have to remind people that like, look, we're all, if you're coming to argue with me on Twitter, you're probably a hardcore fan that gets what the salary cap is, that gets all this stuff. Most of the fans that fill the Amway Center, and you may hate me saying this is still a business. Most of the fans that fill the Amway Center, they're going to 1 or 2 games a year. They just want to be entertained. They just want a team that's going to be competitive and give them something fun to do. And so I don't see the 19 and 20 seasons as a waste. I saw them as necessary to kind of keep the fans engaged a little bit. And obviously it was a little bit of a mirage, a little bit of fool's gold. We all kind of understood that. We all understood they needed to do something, and they finally picked a path, and now we'll see where they go. And obviously we'll see what happens. So it's definitely a balance. And I try to approach people with respect. I try, if they're asking me a question, I try to answer it honestly. I'm getting a little bit better at sussing out people who just want to argue. And I try not to engage in argument for the sake of argument. But if there is a good argument to be had or something interesting to explore, like I'm crowdsourcing too. Like I want to know what you guys want me to talk about as well. So if you're asking me questions, I want to answer them. And if you raise a good point that I hadn't thought about, I'm going to go think about it a little bit more and dive into it a little bit.
Well, I got another question. then this, maybe you can crowdsource this for another topic. Well, let's wrap up this conversation with this, in my opinion. Dwight Howard, one of the greatest players ever put on a pinstripe uniform for the Magic. He brought us our only finals game win. We did not win a finals, but we won a finals game. He is currently unsigned. He's not in the NBA. He's currently unsigned, does not have a contract. Let's keep this kind of short because this is a two-parter. With Dwight potentially not being in the NBA, he could have played his last NBA game, which I don't think so. I think he'll end up on a team somewhere at some point, maybe not at the very start
mercenary
of the season,
market.
but
The mercenary
he'll be
market
there
will
at
be
some
open.
point. But if this is his last, if he has played his last game, what are you going to remember Dwight by, and what should Magic fans remember Dwight by? Because I think that's two different things. Because for me personally, I'm not mad at Dwight. Dwight brought me my favorite moments ever as a Magic player. He's the most successful player to ever for the Magic. He's the most successful player ever to be on, to wear a Magic uniform. Even though there are better players, Shaq is a better player than Dwight, but Dwight was more successful in Orlando. So when I think of Dwight, I think of excitement, of energy, of success, happiness. Yeah, there was a year of weirdness and he left and it kind of sucked, and that sucked for a little while, and I got over it a couple of years later. But like, how do you remember him, and how do you think fans should remember him?
Yeah, I mean, I remember Dwight being one of those guys where when you went, if you were going to see Dwight Howard play, you were going to see something special. You knew you had a chance to win because Dwight Howard was on the floor. That's how good Dwight Howard was. And I know a lot of people probably think the offense wasn't there to feel that way. It was 100% there. Like he was one of the 5 best players in the league for a long time, for an extended period of time. And I'm always going to remember that feeling more than anything else. That belief that we have the best player on the floor. And I think some of that has been forgotten because of the way that people talk about his career, the way that his career's kind of petered out, some of the injuries that he's had, and the situations that he's kind of been involved in. But he was one of those guys that you went to the game, you were going to see something incredible. When I took friends to go to Magic games, when I was in college, when I was in high school, and they were seeing Dwight Howard for the first time, they would say, I've never seen someone do something like that, or I've never seen a player who could do that. And I don't, I think sometimes we take that for granted. I think certainly by the end of the Dwight era, the Dwight period, we took that a little bit for granted. And there are a lot of reasons why Dwight ended up leaving, and some of them are legitimate. Some of them are silly. And some of the things the Magic did in that situation were smart. Some of the things they did were really silly and really dumb. But at the end of the day, like I would tell people, once, the emotions were raw for a while, and they should have been at the end of the day, he left the city, and the franchise and the organization struggled to recover. But after a little while, it was just like, I'm not going to let one bad year, one really weird one, a messy divorce, but one bad year erase what was the best 8 years of this franchise's history, or 8 of the best years of this franchise's history. He was arguably he's certainly part of 2 of the 4 best teams in Magic history. He was arguably part of the best team in Magic history. You can pick 2009 or 2010. I would pick 2010. He was someone who defined the city, was the representative of a city that was growing, and changed in a lot of ways while he was here. And he was the face of that. And, to some extent, Orlando took on his personality, like where, we were a fun loving city. We weren't going to care what people thought about us. We were telling the world we were coming. Again, like Dwight Howard, maybe we needed a little bit of seriousness to get there eventually, but we were really coming into our own as a city, and I think Dwight was a great face for that. And I get why people are still upset at him. It's always difficult when a player does what Dwight did, and I don't think the Magic did him any favors. I don't think I think the Magic were so afraid of the Shaq thing repeating itself that they made a whole bunch of other mistakes on the other end of the spectrum, and it cost them. And the reality is, in the NBA, most players are going to push their way out at some point. Even Kobe tried to get out of the Lakers. Even Kobe tried to leave the Lakers. People forget about that because the Lakers held firm. They found a way to get back into title contention and, cemented his legacy with the Lakers.
I'd say Paolo probably ain't going to retire in a single jersey, for a single team his entire time.
It's very, very rare that happens. I mean, Giannis might do it. Maybe Jason Tatum does it.
I mean, Steph, he's going to do it.
Steph's going to do it. Like it's super, super rare in this modern NBA. Again, you have to be winning titles essentially to keep guys forever. I think at the end of the day, Dwight was just a really special player. You can't tell the history of the Orlando Magic without Dwight Howard.
Yeah.
Without being reverent about Dwight Howard. Like, he defined that team. Like I said at the top of the show, the Magic changed the way the NBA was played, and Dwight Howard was a big reason why, and a big part of why. And I don't think we can forget that. And I was 6 or 7 years old when Shaq left, and I remember being so angry at Shaq. Like that, I don't want to take away that emotion, because that was a real emotion that I felt when I was 7 when Shaq. It's a real emotion people felt about Dwight. But we all eventually forgave Shaq and welcomed Shaq back home.
Yeah, totally.
When the Magic start retiring jerseys, 25 goes up first, 32 goes up second. And I don't think that's an argument.
It's funny. I actually look at Dwight, his past moves after the Magic, where people are like, he's bounced around a lot. He was like cancer in locker rooms and stuff like that. And yeah, he had his joking personality, but I actually kind of re-look at it a little bit differently than I feel like a lot of people do. Like, his time in LA was weird for sure, but I think it takes a very special person to be able to deal with Kobe in a locker room setting. And obviously Dwight and him just did not work. Right.
Well, and also don't forget that the injury to me is what changed his career. But yeah.
Injuries too change his career, but also honestly, the chemistry is probably more or less why he didn't re-sign with them after his injuries, right? Then he goes to the Rockets to play with James Harden, and he got flack there, right? And then he goes to all these like crappy rebuilding teams in Atlanta and Charlotte.
He became an easy scapegoat, and it's because people just didn't like him. And there's something to that.
Hold on a second, though. I want to finish my thought. I want to go back to the Rockets part. I feel like the Rockets era is something that really started shaping the narrative of him being a cancer to locker rooms and, always wanting out. And I think we have to reassess that as fans and look at it now that we have more information on James Harden. Because if you look at James Harden and you look at Dwight Howard, James Harden's probably played with just as many superstars now in his career, and has on a different level. He went through Dwight, Russ, Chris Paul in Houston. He's now played with Kyrie and KD. He's now with Embiid. So it's like, I can't respect Harden enough to say that Dwight was the problem in Houston when maybe Harden was the problem in Houston. And for me, that starts to slowly shift. Well, maybe Dwight isn't as bad as we thought, because then he went to Atlanta, which was a shit show rebuilding. And then he went to the Charlotte, which was a shit show rebuilding. And they were asking him to be the first or second best player on a team, when at that point he probably should have been asked to be the third, but they were small market, didn't have a third. Right. And so I just feel like there's more context. Like, he got injured immediately in Washington, never even got a chance to be the second or the third guy with Beal and Wall. And so I don't know. I feel like we kind of have to relook at his history a little bit, and maybe take some of the narrative down a hair. So anyways, that's my thought. Malik, do you have any last thoughts before we wrap up this conversation with Phil?
Well, I guess I'll just do the last thing about Dwight. I guess for me, I think that the injury, going to LA and coming back too early, kind of change the narrative on him,
Yeah.
because I think that once his otherworldly athleticism was gone, because he came back so early from that the fact that he was so painfully unself-aware in terms of how he was as a basketball player and a person, it became more and more evident on the court and off the court that he still thought he was that same guy for years to come. He still, the same jokes and stuff he did before, that when you're a great player, maybe a little bit funnier. When the pretty girl tells the jokes, it seems funny, but when the person like me tells the same joke, maybe it's not quite as funny, that kind of thing. So I think those kind of things kind of hurt him over time. I still think he lacks a little bit of self-awareness. I'm hopefully that over the passage of time, he kind of gets that and is able to kind of present himself a little differently. But he's definitely, Hall of Famer. I think he's definitely an NBA top 75 guy. Should have been in that 50 range. That was ridiculous. And once those things are corrected over time, I think, we'll be able to enjoy it a little more and stuff and come back to Orlando. I don't necessarily want him on the court, but I do want him, at half court, waving to the crowd and that kind of stuff with his family, that kind of thing.
I think he figured out a shift. I think we would have seen it in Washington with him clearly being the third person after Beal and Wall. But we didn't get a chance to see it because it was like, I think he was injured within 11 games or something like that. And maybe not. There was also some rumors with that too, that they were psyched when he was not on the team anymore. But when he went back to join the Lakers in, I think 2019, 2020, that's when the narrative shifts for me, where he really got in place, because he got praises from his teammates about being a good locker room guy, and being a good teammate from LeBron and the rest of the squad. There was not a single complaint. We haven't heard a complaint about Dwight being a locker room problem in years now at this point. So, yeah, that's my perspective. So, well, Philip, I just want to say thank you for joining us. It's a pleasure as always. You've been on the show multiple times. It's always fun to get you back on here and talk a little bit about basketball. Today, we're talking a little bit more specifically about some of your experiences and Magic history and stuff like that. And so I really just appreciate it. Why don't you quickly give the rundown on where people can find you?
Yeah, you can find me. You can find my written work on OrlandoMagicDaily.com. Follow me on Twitter at OMagicDaily, as well as my personal account at PhilipRR_OMD. You can follow and subscribe to my podcast, Locked On Magic. We are in our summer schedule, so we're 3 times a week, but you can download that wherever you download podcasts. Excited for Eurobasket. Excited for some actual basketball here coming up pretty soon. So we'll get to see the Wagner Bros and some good basketball here very, very soon. So I'm very, very excited about that.
And listeners, thanks for tuning into the Close-Up Magic. We appreciate you. Please like and subscribe to our content as well as Philip's content. And we'll see you next week. Peace.